Now we have Frances McCormack, who is one half of the grumpy old vegans, and she's terrific. She's a medievalist. She teaches medieval studies at the National University of Ireland at Galway. And she is a real stalwart. She's been doing a lot. She's just started a new subsite, howdoigovegan.com, where she's basically interacting with people just on the topics that we discuss in howdoigovegan.com, which is a site that we launched last year. She does an awful lot. She moderates. She writes songs. And she does an awful lot. She helps with research work for projects that we're working on. And in any event, Frances, please.
Aren't you all feeling lucky that you get to sit here and listen to these amazing advocates giving you some of their experience? Are you feeling inspired to get out on the streets tomorrow and start talking to people about veganism? Yeah? We're just had a fantastic weekend and we can go forward on this. This is what my talk is about. My talk is about asking questions. I've asked you a couple of questions. You're already, I can see, agreeing with me. You're warming to me. You're going to be receptive to what I say. If you use questions in your advocacy, it makes you listen. You're listening rather than talking. But you can direct conversations in very clever ways to get people to say the things that you want them to say, that you would be saying yourselves. They're advocating to themselves. Let me tell you how this happens. Let me tell you how this works. So first of all, what you need to do is create rapport. You're only going to be able to advocate to somebody who likes you. And that doesn't mean that you have to be friends. It means you have to be pleasant. It means that you have to be approachable, you have to be open, you have to be trustworthy. Careful of body language, open body language, confident body language. But listen and adapt. If you're listening, you can understand how your message that you're not actually delivering, you're asking your listener to deliver it. You can listen to how that's being received and you can steer the conversation accordingly. It's a far more intelligent and critical way of advocacy than just talking. Because our message, how we deliver it, depends on the person to whom we're speaking. I don't like the idea of elevator pitches. I will never give somebody the opportunity to ask me why I'm vegan. Because vegan is normal. Animal exploitation is abnormal. So instead of having them ask me why I'm vegan, I ask them why they're not. And this is powerful. This is powerful. We need to change the conversation. Every single advocacy encounter you make is a form of political disruption. You're disrupting the status quo. You're getting people to think about how they use animals and why. And that's what we want to do. We want to start breaking that line of thinking down so that we can shift it and move it into new discussions, into new areas. So there are different kinds of questions that you can ask. There's an excellent essay, and I can't remember the title of it because it's so long. Moral concern, and I will post it on the How Do I Go Vegan site immediately after this talk. There's an excellent essay on moral concern, moral impulse and rational argument that Professor Francione has written, and it talks about how, and if you've read Eat Like You Care, you know this trick. You get people to engage ethically and emotionally at the same time. So whatever stirs their concern about animals, get them talking about their companion animals and listen. Let them talk as long as they want to. Let them get emotional about the animals in their lives. You listen to them and you steer questions like, but tell me about your dog. How is your dog different from other dogs? You'll get things like he's got interests. You'll get things like he's got an individual personality. These are the things that we would normally tell people in advocacy encounters. Now you've got people telling you. They're building their own framework. They're convincing themselves. All you've got to do is join the dots. So you can ask closed questions as well, and Christian pointed to this, to build that moral impulse. Do you think it's okay to inflict suffering on animals for when we don't have the need to do so? Chances are 99.9% of the people you talk to will say, no, we shouldn't do that. So you're asking a question that gets a yes or no answer. Perfect. So you build on that and you can lead them to veganism. Another great question is, if you talk about veganism, ask the person to whom you're speaking, does that make sense? If that makes sense to them, then why the heck aren't they vegan? So use these questions as a way of creating accord between you, of creating areas of agreement, and you'll actually start to change their thinking. You may not necessarily see the results. We often think of advocacy as something that has to be immediate, that if we haven't made a vegan there and then on the spot, we haven't been successful. But one of my friends, she was talking to me about sheep. I didn't know her very well at the time, and I said to her, "Oh, you're vegan?" And she said, "No." Now, I didn't ask, "Are you vegan?" It was, "Oh, you're vegan. You are vegan." And she said, "No." And I said, "Why not?" And she shrugged and she walked away from me. And a lot of people shrug and walk away from me. I'm used to it. But she came back to me the next week and she was vegan. She went away with that question in her head and she processed it and she thought about it. She went straight to the abolitionist approach site. And she found the materials. I mean, abolitionists immediately. Why aren't you vegan? She started to think about it and realized it was the only thing that made sense. We can also use Socratic questions, so big open questions to try and clarify positions. So ask your listener, well, why do you think it's okay to buy humane animal products? Why do you think cage-free eggs are okay? What do you think is the difference between a cage-free egg and an egg that comes from a battery hen? Is that a good enough reason to continue using animals if they give you an objection? What do you think the solution to this might be if they have a problem? And you're getting them to think, you're getting them to engage critically with it. And the other thing that I like to do is to create doubt. So I will remind most of us, I'll ask you for a show of hands here, but most of us when we were children probably objected to eating animals at some point, when we realized that the steak or the chicken on our plate used to be a living being. Can I see a show of hands for those of you who went through that process? Okay, bring your listener back to that. When you were a child, do you remember ever asking your parents or your guardian, why are we eating? What were you thinking at the time? Bring them back to that and start them questioning it all over again. And the last thing that I do is the muddiest point strategy. Was there anything that we talked about today that wasn't clear? Anything you'd like to go over again? And that can be a useful way of rounding up the discussion. And then, as I think it was Anita said, give them your card, give them your contact information, and I'm here to help you. This is what I am going to do. I will contact you in a week, I'll contact you in a month, and get people so that they've got questions. Ask them to have questions for you. Ask them to prepare those questions. Now they're leading the conversation. So we can find ways of getting people to self-advocate if we listen, if we're patient, and if we really draw out that moral impulse. And that makes our job so much easier, but it also changes their mindset so they start to see our world as normal and theirs as abnormal. And that is what we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Frances.